All right, what's going on, guys? How are we doing on this fine evening? Big night tonight, y'all.
Big night.
Big night. A little bit of housekeeping things, I guess, to get out of the way. In case you didn't know, Spike Cohen's interview for us got pushed back about an hour, but that's no big deal. We're cool with it. So we're going to run a normal podcast episode until Spike gets here. And then after that, we're just going to roll right into Spike Cohen's interview. Housekeeping item number 2, my glorious mustache.
What a glory.
Look at this thing. This thing is
What a
amazing.
true thing of wonder.
And housekeeping item number 3.
You kind of look like a bandit with that mustache. by
My
the
mom
way.
told me that
It's a little bit like
I look like a Wild West bartender, and that I just
Yeah.
need a hat and a
could-
gun. And I was
you
like,
could do like a
Halloween costume set in January.
you could be a stand-in on like Westworld or something.
Yeah, well, that might be what's next for old Ben Fay.
There you go.
Housekeeping item number 3. The Chiefs are playing right now, and as much as I want you guys and I want updates on that, we can't have the chat flooded with updates on the game. It's killing me on the inside, but I can't get distracted. I can't get distracted. But hashtag Chiefs Kingdom, it's fine. The only thing I'm gonna say is no lead is safe, and then we're just gonna leave it at that. So, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff.
You're in charge of the housekeeping. I'm just here.
Alex is just here. I'm just here,
I'm
man.
just here. I don't care about the rules.
I'm
I don't care about
I think that's
housekeeping.
all housekeeping stuff taken care of.
My
let's-
house is unkept.
Let's get into it. This past week we had the inauguration of President Joe Biden,
We sure did.
and
What a day.
it was a day. I was fortunate enough to be able to sneak watching it while I was at work because it was important and I wanted to watch it. Number 1, I am thankful that it went peacefully and really went off without a hitch.
Man.
That was big. That was big.
Couldn't believe I was sitting there watching it like, wow, everything's gonna go smooth today, huh?
Yep. So that was good. I was really happy that nothing crazy happened. I was displeased, however, with the fact that they introduced the Clintons as the Honorable William, J. Clinton and Hillary Rodham Clinton. And I was in the middle of work, and I heard that in my ear, and I exclaimed loudly for all to hear, "There's nothing honorable about the Clintons. They kill people." And just went that, and everybody kind of looked at me like, "What?" And I was like, "Don't worry." I was like, "They just introduced the Clintons as honorable, and they are the farthest thing from it." So that was
Not very honorable.
that was
but,
that was the first
that's
thing.
neither here nor there.
That was the first thing that set me off about the inauguration.
They were like giddy. Up
Yeah,
there.
I don't
They
know.
were
That
loving
was
life.
the other thing that was kind of like rubbed me wrong was like everybody got seated, blah blah blah, and then I don't even remember who it was. What's her face got up and did like the introductory speech. And like I could tell in her face when I would like sneak looks at her face, and I could tell in her voice that they were just so fucking happy to be there
yeah.
and getting like Trump out of the White House. And I was like, all right, guys, I know not everybody liked him, yada yada yada, but do we have to look so fucking gleeful about it? Like
It's like their Super Bowl, man.
they were just. Thanks, Combo. Yeah, Amy Klobuchar. I am not going to attempt to pronounce that again.
Amy Klobuchar.
Klobuchar. Yeah, well, she was over the moon, and there was plenty of people there that were the same way, and they weren't even trying to hide it. And
No.
I get it, but this is, it's a big deal. It's a formal event, and I don't know. I just think, for me personally, it was a bad look to have the leaders of our country from the different facets of government just sit there and be like, "Ooh, this is the best thing ever."
You
I
could
don't know.
hear it. You could hear faint in the background. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Witch, old witch, the wicked witch. It was
Yeah.
like you could just tell they were all just running around like, oh, greatest day ever.
Yeah, so that was,
The
I don't know.
outsider's gone.
That just kind of left a really bad taste in my mouth.
I was right about Trump taking Air Force One.
Oh, really? He took Air
Yep,
Force One to Mar-a-Lago?
he did. He did.
Well, I
He
mean,
said,
technically up
deuces.
until Biden was inaugurated right just before noon, he was still the president, so
I was hearing that I think this is the third president in history to not attend the inauguration of the incumbent president.
or the incumbent not attending the inauguration of the
Yeah. I got that backwards.
of
You
the
know what I'm
incoming.
saying,
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
One of them was like because it was back in the 1800s, and he would have had to taken a carriage in the morning at like 4 o'clock, so he didn't. And he got there for like the after ceremonies and stuff.
Huh.
And then was it Aaron Burr? I can't remember who it was. Somebody had a tiff with the incoming president, and that morning, as he was signing final executive orders, he was like, "I'm not going. I'm not going to that, guys." I forget the two presidents.
Well, that
Both
one
in,
sounds
like the 1800s.
that
though.
one sounds pretty close to what happened this go round.
Mhm.
So
He was a
yeah,
sad boy.
there was that, and
He was
then
a sad boy.
the other thing, like for me, I don't know, I didn't like it was just a whole dog and pony show, and I was like, ugh. I mean, I get it, it's a big day, it's a big event, blah blah blah, but there was a lot of I felt unnecessary pomp and circumstance.
Well, I mean, it was nice to see, especially with the days leading up in the disarray that it was. It was nice to see like a big celebration of like a new president, like sparking change. But here's what's gonna happen. It's already happening. First 100 days, he's gonna start passing all the shit that he's doing, and then it's already a fucking not a bloodbath, but
Yeah,
it's already the same old shit. Which is
yeah,
why I'm so glad we have Spike on tonight to talk about how we actually spark change, like how do we make this happen, because it's going to be the same shit show for the next 4 years
right. And I was
without all the
actually
dramatics.
looking at some stuff right before this that I'll touch on here in a minute once we get done. Just kind of, I guess, summarizing or at least I get done summarizing the inauguration on my end while I was watching it. One of the other things, and this part made me laugh when I heard it, but Biden got to one section of his speech. And he was like, I will bring like, peace and justice and stability and unity to the United States. And immediately the first thing that came to my head, and all you Star Wars fans out there will probably thought the same thing, was the scene from Episode 3 where Anakin says, "I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire." And as soon as I heard that, I went ahead and just made a meme for it and posted it around at a couple places. And this was the concoction that I came up with.
Man,
It just made me laugh. So I just kind of put Biden's face over Anakin's and just went with that.
you
So
get TikTok, you're making memes.
I've always
Man,
been making
you're
memes, man.
just freaking right. You're such a child.
I've got
Ben.
to, got to get in there and get the Zoomers hooked.
Let's go after those
So
15-year-old audience.
that is
Gotta
the
educate them up.
that is the that is what I got. That's
If
what
I
I got from
continue to
that.
check my phone, it's not because I'm uninterested. It's because I'm messaging Spike's guy.
Yeah. So there was
Said he'll
that.
show up in about 2 hours.
He's gonna show up in 2 hours.
Yeah, about 8 my time.
Oh wow. Okay, we got to keep you guys entertained for like 2 hours. Cool.
We can do it.
We could do it. So that was
Am I a
one of
bit
the first
quiet?
things.
Squash says I'm a bit quiet.
I just turned you up on my end. I think. How's the audio now, guys?
Check, mic check, mic check. This is DJ Ginger on the radio, checking the mic.
So
Check,
let me
check. Come on, Squash.
I
Help me
think
out
it,
so I can
no,
stop doing
I think
this.
it's good. Yeah, I just checked it. I think you're good now. So yeah, that was one of the things I thought. I was like, oh god, here we go. There's that. And my dad texted me a couple other things of like, this is how democracy dies, with thunderous applause. And I was like, we'll see. And I'll get into that here in just a minute. But I mean, other than that, there were some things that were said during it that I was like, it's not too bad, and there's some other things said that I was like, ugh, yeah, right, that's not gonna happen. Um, so yeah,
The message was about unity. So that's, I mean, on the surface, and they've talked about it a lot this week about, it's easy to give a speech talking about unity. It's another thing to live out your terms, inspiring and sparking unity. So, I mean, everything he said sounded good. He didn't like call out Trump for not being there.
yeah,
Um, in fact, there was one point where he was going to read, thank you to my successors who have laid the way for me. And he was going to list uh, Bush, Clinton, and Obama and leave out Trump.
mm,
And that was actually on the teleprompter, but he chose to
leave
leave
that.
off the names and not specifically mention Trump and just say to my predecessors, which
Well, that was probably a good call on his part.
I
Um,
know. Everything so far so good. I
yeah,
I hope to God that man gets in there, changes this country. Our taxes go down. That's already not happening, but in
no.
theory, we take care of our veterans. Homelessness rates go down. Employment rate goes up. All the things that most people just want in
All
our
the things that
country.
people
You
want, but
know.
we'll see. So I did this. This came from, and we'll take this with grains of salt. But what I heard, this came from Fox News, and this was a little while ago. Just so I could, just because I was interested, just to see. The headline on this little blurb was "Left Wing Riots Rattle U.S. Cities After President Biden's Inauguration." Now they didn't really talk about any of the rioting in this little 7-minute clip that I watched, but they did talk about the fact that one of the things that Biden did, and this kind of ties into some Canadian news, which we'll probably get into as well. When Biden, basically put a stop through one of his executive orders to the Keystone XL pipeline happening, that laid off a lot of union workers. And historically, union workers typically vote Democrat, so a lot of them are not happy right now that happened, because that is their livelihood, their good paying union job that just got canned because Biden, through a lot of his executive orders that he just signed, like literally the first day inauguration happened, he went to the Oval Office and sat down and signed like 17 executive orders, many of which were reverting a lot of the executive orders that Trump passed during his presidency. One of those was putting us back into the Paris Accords, which then led to the Keystone XL pipeline being stopped. And also that put a stop to any exploration and drilling and piping of oil from the Arctic as well, which at least some of that is part of Canada. So there's a lot of people on the Democratic side that are not happy with that. Another thing that I guess the left isn't, well, not, I wouldn't say the left isn't happy with, but another thing that's happened is this presidency, and this again is coming from Fox News, so I'm just kind of paraphrasing. This candidacy for Biden and Kamala Harris was I guess advertised or put forth as a more moderate, more moderate to centrist like presidency. And now through a lot of these executive order signings, it's looking like it's going to lean more and more to the left, and more in line, I guess, with some of the things that Bernie wanted. So I'm just going to go through now. I have it pulled up. This is I guess the top executive orders that Biden signed while in the Oval Office right after his inauguration. So we're gonna go through these. Some of these I'm not a big fan of like at all.
One thing real quick. Pwn donkeys. We're gonna get to that first pass term limits in Congress.
Right,
I'll get to that in a second.
right. So one of the first ones, one of them was protecting the federal workforce from requiring mask wearing. This was just, if you're going to go to federal property, or if you're a worker on federal property or anything like that, you're going to wear a mask if you'd step on federal grounds. Whatever, not that big of a deal. This one, I'm not super hyped up on. So this one says organizing and mobilizing to combat COVID-19. So this order focuses on the desire to act swiftly and aggressively to control or to combat coronavirus disease. It's titled "The Organizing and Mobilizing the United States Government to Provide a Unified and Effective Response to Combat COVID-19 and to Provide United States Leadership on Global Health and Security." It established positions of coordinator for the COVID-19 response and counselor to the president and a deputy coordinator as well within the executive office of the president. They will be responsible for coordinating federal efforts linked to points such as vaccine distribution and testing. It is also ordered the heads of agencies must report any obstacle to the COVID-19 response to their attention as soon as possible for them to coordinate responses to. The order also accounts for preparedness for potential future biological and pandemic threats. So
Yeah.
the be all
Yeah, go ahead.
the be all and end all of this is that the government is now very involved in COVID-19 response. They're basically the federal government is controlling everything in relation to this pandemic. Vaccines, where the vaccines are getting distributed, how many of the vaccines are getting distributed. Like their hand is like we went from not much government control to now full on government with their hand in everything. And I think that that's a doorway to open up for the government to get a lot more control in a lot of other areas of our lives. And I'm not really, that doesn't sit well with me.
I get where it's coming from in the sense that Trump basically gave the power to the states and said, do what you need to do to stay open. And the states handled it shitty. I mean, you look at like New York, California, some states handled it very well. Like Texas handled it pretty well. I think I've said before, I'm an investor in a bar in Austin, and I invested right before COVID hit. And I was like, well, that's money I'm never going to see again, but through like takeout alcohol sales, they kept people working with keeping people away from each other. And then when it was safe and deemed, okay, it looks like we can open the doors again, that's what they did. And then you have California still shutting down outdoor dining when there's no scientific or feasible evidence to suggest that outdoor dining is contributing to the spread of COVID. Right. Some states still have gyms shut down, and there's no evidence to suggest that people using a gym, using sanitary measures, wearing masks, keeping people away from me. How often do you work out within 6 feet from someone?
Rarely ever. I try and keep my distance from people when I'm at the gym.
Yeah. Just on a normal day.
On a normal day. And I use the sprays and the towels that they have to clean up after I'm done and before I use it, because there's some scumbags out there that don't clean shit.
And what I was hoping for on the COVID response was what a lot of people were touting and talking about if Biden got elected was, let's turn this over to people that we hire, an independent agency who stands to profit nothing from this other than just handling it well and giving us guidelines and recommendations to how to live in a pandemic. Let's turn this over to them and listen to them.
Right.
But instead, the opposite, now you're just completely controlling it from a government standpoint, where we all know government is business. There's going to be fiscal
as much as we say,
decisions made that have to do with profit versus what's best for the American people.
Right. And as much as we say, that government shouldn't be run like a business, and Trump ran it like a business the last, 4 years, there's not much difference, honestly, just because of how the money is handled through government and who gives money to the government. Mm-hmm. So the chat's like, because the states handled it well, ? We covered that. Some did, some didn't. Squash asks, is the government not meant to be involved when trying to fight a public health crisis? We're not saying that the government's not supposed to be involved. I'm just not comfortable with the amount of involvement the government is now imposing.
There's a difference between having an active hand in it and trying to do what's best for the American people, and there's a difference between completely taking it over and now saying the power lies within us, and we make the decisions and you listen.
Right.
And you respond.
So maybe the federal government does handle this well, and we move forward and they do a good job with the rest of, handling of this pandemic. What really irks me about this is the fact that they can use this as their toehold or foothold to set a precedent of when the government can take control of everything whenever they fucking want to.
Well, and you see, we've talked about examples in Australia,
Hmm.
examples in the UK, the dangers that are involved with giving this over to the federal government to where they can control basically what people are saying, how they're saying it, what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And there again, there's some real gray lines
Right.
of where the power should start and where it should stop.
Right. And so, in case you don't remember, I'll just use the Australia example as well, because
Grab
there's
another
there's
beer.
there's good and bad that happen in that, right? So, for the most part, pretty much every province, every state in Australia, whatever you want to call it, with the exception of Victoria, basically relied on the country government, the federal government, to impose the lockdown, and pretty much everybody abided by that. Now the bad part on that was that there was, for example, a 12-year-old kid that said, "Dude, screw this. I don't want. I'm done being in my house. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go play in the park." And it happened to be after curfew, so that happened, and the cops came and arrested that kid. Like, just grabbed him and threw him in the back of the wagon because he broke curfew. Yes, he broke curfew, but the kid's 12 years old and he wanted to go play outside. I'm not saying right or wrong, but for me that feels like an excessive use of government power. One of the other things that they did is they started censoring a lot of basically free speech by citizens on social media platforms. So one woman in Australia made a post on Facebook, basically not in agreement with the lockdown and expressing her opinion on the whole matter. Well, the cops came to her house, confiscated literally all of her her and her husband's electronic devices, every electronic device in that house confiscated. They arrested her, and they charged her with something like basically like dissent against the government or something. So that's where that's the bad side of that much government involvement. The good side of it is, with the exception of Victoria, that pretty much Australia's COVID-19 cases went way down with the government induced lockdown. Victoria, on the other hand, said, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're going to hire a separate, contracting company basically to impose lockdown. The the bad side about that, and I honestly haven't heard really much of a good upside, was the fact that that whole system became susceptible to bribes, and a lot of bribes happened. People bribing the enforcers. That sounds harsh. Bribing the people of the contracted company that were there to I guess enforce the lockdown. They started accepting bribes so people could go to the grocery store, people could get out of their house, yada yada yada, and bribes were given in all types of ways. And Victoria had a huge spike in COVID-19 cases. It was the one state in Australia that had a large COVID-19 problem, because the system that they imposed was we became susceptible to bribes. Now, what Alex has said just a few minutes ago was, we handed over to an entity that doesn't stem to profit from it. My only thing with that is that there could be the bribery aspect come in with that, but there's also ways to
Well,
mitigate that
pay them.
part of it. Yeah, just pay them
Pay
enough
them.
so that bribes don't matter.
Again, I've used the sports reference before. Like, basketball referees could stand to profit millions of dollars from bettors, right? If they threw a game or if they had an outcome come out that was monetarily induced, right? But it doesn't happen because they're paid well, and they purposely seek out like lawyers, people who make a good amount of money, to come and pay them more
And
money, and they have high moral
yeah, I would
standards.
say people that
So
are
hire
prone.
those people to come in and manage this situation for us. And yeah, have the government control that, but don't just step in and say, well, hey, trust us. Just trust us. This is in your best interest.
We'll
You
tell
know,
you when you can get your vaccine, where you can get your vaccine, and who's allowed to get the vaccine.
you may not be able to
I
go
don't
back
like.
to work for
Yeah.
3 weeks, because we're going to shut down. And I'm not saying they're doing this. I'm just saying when government is in this amount of control, just enjoy your $1,200 that will barely get you by for this amount of time while we shut everything down. Um, and just trust us that it's going to work out. Well, no, bitch, I don't trust you.
Right.
No, there is a substantial amount of Americans right now that have zero trust in the American government system. And again, I don't want to be a broken record. I'm glad that we have someone coming in tonight that can shed some more detailed light on how we actually start to make a change by voting in people that we know and we can trust, like Tulsi Gabbard.
Exactly.
She was on Rogan again. Did you listen to that at all?
I didn't, but I will go back and listen to that one because that one does sound like it would be very, very interesting.
Yeah,
The
Donkeys. Who is Pwn Donkeys?
Pedonkeys is a guy that I know. He's from one of my other streamer buddies' streams. He's a mod over there, but I told him about this and also told him that we have a little sports section in my Discord now that we talk about stuff. And he was very interested to come and swing by and hear the interview with Spike.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming. And yes, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
For sure.
There's no better way to put it.
And his other comment is the problem isn't with places that practice good COVID measures. The problem with places and people that refuse to do what is right or necessary. Exactly. And we covered that in a previous episode. And I'll shout out my family podcast as well. We're on a little bit of break from that, but we also covered, both us and my family's podcast. We both covered, the good of one versus the goods of the many during a pandemic, basically, to boil it down into one simple phrase. We've talked about that before, and the problem with America is people are selfish, and people are like, we're taking my rights, all the time, and so now we're at the point where we're at, where some states are doing really well, and some states are just fucking atrocious.
When you turn what should be a bipartisan issue and you turn it into a partisan issue, that's the result of what we're living in right now.
Right.
Where I just saw one of my friends from Texas, guy I played baseball with in college, saying something about how the CDC is now saying that a nose swab isn't substantial enough to get a positive COVID result, right? The gist of what the article was saying is that it's not the most accurate way that we have at our fingertips now. So it's becoming somewhat outdated. And it was from like US News Corporation or something. I just saw the screenshot. I didn't read the article because I don't know where the fuck he got it from. It's probably one of those like clickbait Facebook
like tabloid, internet tabloid.
Yeah. That's not to suggest that you cannot completely throw out a nose swab as a way to be able to determine if someone has COVID, right? But he shared that as a screenshot and said, this ain't no pandemic. They've been lying to us all along. They told us nose swabs are the gold standard, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what you don't understand, like you can take a little snippet of something and contextualize it to make it seem like, oh, they've been after us all along and COVID isn't no pandemic, Again, if we would just cut it down the middle and say, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, we're going to find a way to tackle this. And in fact, we're going to bring in a team who is getting paid large sums of money to guide the way on this. Beautiful. The only incentive they have is to make things better in the middle of a pandemic for the country. That's the only incentive they have. So why don't we do that?
Combo, we are full screen, my friend. We should be, anyway. Yeah, we are. This is as full screen as Zoom goes. So, but yeah, Pedonkeys, you're right. That's another problem is no one reads past the clickbaity headlines and nobody, people just read sensationalized headlines and take that as the end all and be all, which is part of the reason we're doing this podcast week in and week out is to try and get information and that at least I wouldn't say our version of the truth, but at least find the truth and put that out there. That way, at least, the people that stop by and listen to us here or on YouTube in the next couple of days when it gets posted after an episode can kind of, oh, these guys actually did some research and looked at shit.
If you care to stay up to date on what is going on politically and in our world day to day, I hope that we can be a little bit of beacon of information, whether you agree with us or not, and you absolutely do not have to agree with us, but you can at least know that we're not sitting here saying something from like a half-cocked attitude.
Right.
We don't have our opinions just because we, see a clickbait article and read the title and then move on. We're like, okay, what's
What's
this actually about?
what's the deeper meaning
Yeah.
behind this? Going back to the thing about being COVID-19 being a bipartisan issue, that was one of the things that I did agree with during Biden's speech. Was he said that that he's going to work to stop health things like this, COVID-19, other things that don't need to be bipartisan issues. He's going to work to keep them from being bipartisan issues and try. It was part of his message of unity. Was to try and keep things that didn't need to be bipartisan from becoming bipartisan. I did another snippet I listened to while I was watching that other video that they showed was him saying, politics doesn't need to be a raging fire that burns everything in front of it. And we don't need to just, go off half cocked with and mad about every disagreement that we have. And I was like, well, that's somewhat refreshing to hear a president stand up, that we haven't had, in the last 4 years say that, let's not fight each other over every little thing, and let's not turn issues that aren't bipartisan into bipartisan issues. So I did at least agree with that part of his speech, and I was like, if you can get that to work, and you can do that, then like, cool.
I don't have to be full screen.
I don't know. It's been like this for a while. I don't know what. Nope, that's not right.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
try
all
this
your
one.
stuff.
And then that's Alex. Yeah, that's not it either. We're just gonna do.
That's beautiful. It's just.
We're just oh, there it goes. Now I wanted it to work. Whatever.
And Donkeys says it's refreshing to listen to you guys. I can tell that we don't align 100% politically, but you both seem to be informed more so than most people I interact with on the internet.
Right.
And the amount of people that I will probably align with 100% politically, that's probably pretty few. 100%. Every policy, every issue.
I don't even think Alex and I agree 100%. We agree. I would say at least upper 90s, but there are probably a couple things here and there that we disagree on.
If you gave us 100 policies that we both looked at and came back to each other after going through all of them, I'm sure there would probably be 5 to 10 that were I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
And that's fine. And we would sit here, look at each other, have a civil discussion, lay out why we do or don't agree with those things, and then be like, nice, bro. Like,
let me say again one more time why I love Dan Crenshaw and Tulsi Gabbard so much. Both are veterans. Tulsi is a pretty not staunch Democrat. She's like a centralist Democrat, and she's not part of that old the Clinton Democrat. Like she's a new fresh face. Hillary Clinton and other people called her a Russian saboteur or something like
that. Which is just so
after she basically
irritating.
Stood up and she destroyed Kamala Harris,
which on
the debate stage.
I watched that clip again.
That really put a sour balloon in that whole party.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, she was on Rogan again this week. Really great person. I really disagree with her on a lot of policies because I do lean more towards the right. But I would have voted for her in a heartbeat over Donald Trump because I know she's real. I know she's a real person. She was a congresswoman and now she lives in Hawaii where she's from and is just surfing every day and just living the Hawaii life.
Yeah.
Then you have Dan Crenshaw, who is one of her good friends, who is very right wing. But again, he's real. I align more with his policy. I don't agree with everything he has to say. He's pretty anti legalization of marijuana. Come on, man. You gotta move forward with the times. You gotta realize that there's a profit to be made there.
Right.
Anyway.
That's another.
they both talk about how they are friends. You know, they might be aggressively when Tulsi was still a congresswoman, they might be aggressively debating, you know, on the floor of Congress that after or that morning, but they'll go to lunch together and at the end of the day potentially have a beer together, you know, and they're not at each other's throats as people.
Right, which is I hope and pray that we can get more of that into government rather than the knockdown drag out fights that we just continually get in. But you know, moving on with some more of these executive orders that
1 second.
Biden signed. Yeah, go
Donkey.
ahead.
Donkey. Colorado made so much money off of weed in their first month of selling it that they had to give money back to the citizens of Colorado because they had too much to do with it.
It's
And
crazy.
then they all voted to just give it to the public school system. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Yep. All right. So these next couple of executive orders that Biden signed, these don't sit super well with me, especially the second one. So this next one is the revocation of certain executive orders concerning federal regulation. So this order also looked to reverse Trump's action, and this one by itself ended 6 of Trump's executive orders. And so Biden was quoted saying in this, "It is the policy of my administration to use available tools to confront the urgent challenges facing the nation, including coronavirus disease, pandemic, economic recovery, racial justice, and climate change. To tackle these challenges effectively, executive departments and agencies must be equipped with flexibility to use robust regulatory action to address national priorities. This order revokes harmful policies and directives that threaten to frustrate the federal government's ability to confront these problems and empowers agencies to use appropriate regulatory tools to achieve these goals. This included revoking Executive Order 13771, which required any executive department or agency announcing a new regulation to also propose the repeal of 2 regulations in return." I'm going to actually run that back real fast. This one was not as bad as the next one I'm about to read.
Say it. I was gonna say it in more layman's terms instead of reading it
So,
word by word. I'm even getting a little bit lost with.
Yeah, and this is like these are just short blurbs on them.
Yeah.
So this one is basically saying that it's the Biden's policy and his administration is to give agencies that need them the tools to confront things that they need to confront, i.e., the pandemic, economic recovery, racial justice, and climate change. It's going to give them the tools to effectively do their job.
Who's he given the tools to?
It just says executive departments and agencies.
So,
like, you know,
i.e., the EPA
or the State Department of whatever, or this this department of whatever. So that one's not so bad. Actually, I think I got that one messed up with another one I was about to go on. That one not too bad. Basically, just giving executive departments and agencies the power to do the things that they need to do.
Yep.
Could play into more government involvement than what we want, but we'll see how that one plays out.
Yeah, that's not a bad.
So that one, I take back my words on that. This one was not.
Yeah, Donkey says he wants to give the regulatory agencies some teeth to do their jobs. Good way of putting it.
Yeah, I think awesome. I got ahead of myself on this. That one was fine. This one, this one I don't like. So this one, and I'm going to read the whole blurb again, and then I'll put it in layman's terms. This one says, ensuring a lawful and accurate enumeration and apportionment pursuant to the decennial census. So this blurb afterwards will probably explain it a little bit more. This order looks to reject stances taken by Trump and ensure all of those living in the U.S. are represented in the House of Representatives. It aims to ensure that the population of each state, for purposes of congressional representation, is determined without regard to whether its residents are in lawful immigration status. This reverses Trump's previous memorandum excluding illegal aliens from the apportionment base following the 2020 census. This one, I don't like. If you're here, this said this, and this is the phrase that really fucked me up on it. Without regard to whether its residents are in lawful immigration status. So this is saying that if you are in this country illegally, and this is what it says to me, if you're in this country illegally, you're still getting represented in the House of Representatives. Like, you're being counted, and what you want to have happen will or what you would like to have happen will be taken into account by your representatives voted to Congress. How the fuck does someone who's not here legally and not have some type of citizenship to this country get the ability to be represented in a government basically for free without doing anything or contribute? Like, what? No.
Yeah, and I mean, if they have like their green card or whatever, that's
Yeah,
completely
that's what it
different.
says. But like it says, without regard to its residents, whether its residents are in lawful immigration status. So if you're in lawful immigration status, i.e., green card, some kind of visa, I'm not totally for sure how that works. I don't think the visas really count. But if you have a green card or like an INS document that says you're a legal resident here,
Yeah, if you're working here, and you're doing it lawfully, then yeah, absolutely, I think they should have the ability to vote. But
it's that one sentence without regard to whether its residents are in lawful immigration status. So that's saying this dude could be fresh off the boat or fresh up from, and please don't take this wrong, be like fresh, out of Mexico in here, not having done anything to gain.
Such a xenophobe.
I know, not having done anything to gain lawful citizenship here. You can just like waltz on in, cast your votes, and be represented in the House of Representatives. Like, no, what?
Yeah, I don't.
That to me, that's bullshit. Like, no.
That's a tough.
If you're
that's a
here,
tough look.
like legally, fine, totally fine with you. If you're here illegally, you don't get to get represented. You don't have any. This is gonna sound like mad harsh, but I don't care. You don't have like. You don't get to get represented. Like
it would be like me strolling into Switzerland. I'm in Switzerland on vacation, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, we're having a big vote today on whether or not the county should serve beer." I'm gonna be like, "Well, hell, I don't know anything about this situation, but I like beer. Sure, I'll vote. I don't belong here. I'm not a citizen. I don't live here, but yeah, sure, I'll vote." And I know the situations are different, but my personal gain from voting versus actually knowing about the situation, maybe the beer is tainted there. I don't know. Obviously, I'm making up situations, but I don't know shit about it. So why should I be able to show up to their country and have an influence in the way that things
right.
happen?
That's what I'm. That's what I like. That's what I'm getting at here. Is like if you're here legally and want something to change that you think would help you or your situation and the people around your situation that you guys have all discussed or like as a community have thought about or whatever, then fine. But if you're here illegally, you don't get to influence how our government governs its people because you aren't one of our people. You're not a citizen. You're not a legal citizen of this country. So sorry, you don't get a voice. If you want a voice, go through the citizenship process. Fidonki said to play devil's advocate, they aren't here on a holiday. Yeah, exactly. Right. It was a very simplified example, I guess, of that. But like, say if I illegally immigrated to England or some other European country or something like that, and was like, I don't like the way this place is run. I'm gonna try and vote to change things. I don't have a voice in how they do shit in that country because I'm not there legally. I'm not a legal citizen.
I'm not a citizen, exactly.
So I just have to sit there and fucking abide by their rules, whether I agree with them or not, because I'm not a citizen.
And again, it's different if you're living here, you're working here, and if you aren't a citizen at that point in time, then yes, your path to citizenship should be much more simple. Come here, America, the land of the opportunity, and be a functioning member of our culture and our society. You should have a more simple path to saying, hey, I'm here, I want to work, I want to live, I want to be free. Then we should be able to say, okay, we will accept you and XYZ will make you a citizen. But if you're coming here for nefarious activities or you're just simply here and not a citizen, you shouldn't have a voice in how our country will be run.
Right. So Badonki
I hope
said,
I'm saying that as eloquently as I
yeah.
can.
Pedonki said it. I think it's less about them getting a vote. They wouldn't get a vote. It would just mean that there are X number of people in Y districts, so now there are Z number of representatives. True, but I still think that those people that shouldn't count towards your representatives in the House of Representatives. If you're not here legally, you don't count.
Well, let me I just thought of this. It's like when that have you ever seen, oh, what is it? Wild Country? That guy who creates a cult in Utah.
I haven't
Um
seen it now.
Wild Country, I think it's called. Um this guy starts a cult, right? And he basically grows his colts enough to where they can buy a large piece of land in Utah right outside of this very small, like 100-person town, right? And so he wants to start changing a lot of the laws on what they can and can't do in the town, i.e., like have his own military and police force, which was like it was written into that city's laws that you can't do that, basically. So what he started doing was busing homeless people into his cult, having them vote. So they swung all of the votes on any of these pieces of city law to directly influence and make it so he could do whatever he wanted legally in that city, basically. I think at one point in time he even became the mayor, like something crazy like that. That you can't make it so susceptible
Right.
where you can swing a vote. I'm not saying that the Democrats would do this, but i.e., open the borders and then promise, migrants a path to citizenship. You're influencing the way that this should happen, and
Right.
it might not be what's best for the country or the culture. It's just whatever is best for that specific politician.
Right. So chat's getting after it on this one, and I enjoy it. So Squash is responding to Pedonkies and said that he gets where he's coming from. But the number counted also influences the amount of money a place gets for government services. And Pedonkies agree with that. So, those illegals wouldn't be allowed to vote. And I know I said voting. I thought that would that could also play into it because the people do you do vote for your representatives. And I think you're right, Penongis. People with a green card can't vote. But with a green card, then you're still here legally, so you do get to benefit from the laws and the services provided because you're here,
If you have a green
legally.
card, I don't think there's anything wrong with giving that person the ability to vote.
No, I don't either.
We know them. They're not illegal. They're not just here not paying tax
They
dollars or
they went
anything.
through the process they wanted to go through to have a green card and be counted as a citizen.
Yeah.
So and Penongi says those extra representatives could be liberal or conservative based on the voting population, which is true. It's how yes, and that is how the census works. Just counting a certain amount of people in a certain place. But my thing is the thing that gets me on that is just the regard to immigration status. And I don't know how they could change it. Like, yes, the census is gonna count, but I feel like another part of the census, if you get to a place or whatever, and I don't know, this is probably improbable to determine everybody's citizenship through the census. Because I had the census people come to my door and ask me because I did my census online, but they asked me about people that lived across the street from me. They were like, "How many people lived here at this time?" And it was just that I was like, oh, 6 or 8 people lived in that house. And he was like, all right, thanks. And left. But,
Yeah.
obviously they didn't ask about their citizenship. This is different because I live on a military base. So pretty much everybody here is a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
But, you take that same example and put it into a community that, obviously is not on a military base. So they come to your door and say, how many people lived over there? And you go, oh, X number of people. And they just go, all right, thanks. And they
Yeah.
leave. Well, what if 3 or 4 of those people are illegal immigrants? So they just get counted, and now your funding goes up for your government services. Your representatives may go up or down based on the amount of people. It's just like I I just feel that the census should take into account legal resident citizens and natural born citizens of the country, and not take into account illegal immigrants because
Yeah.
they're they're here. Yeah, maybe they're working. Maybe they're maybe they're contributing to the community that they live in, but you're not here legally. So like it's cool you're doing all that other stuff, but you're not here legally. So you're reaping benefits that the country's giving you without you know basically giving citizenship, accepting citizenship in return. Like that's the price you pay to benefit from those systems. Is that's the cost, is being a citizen. If you're not
Yeah.
a citizen, sorry.
Well, and Donkey says we can all agree that the immigration system needs work, and that's
No, for sure it
thousand
does.
percent accurate. I'm actually, I don't know if Donkeys knows, but from a border town in South Texas. So like I have 20 years of firsthand witness to where good people get screwed and the wrong people get a free pass. And that's what you'd be surprised talking to the amount of my Hispanic friends who are either first generation or second generation immigrants from Mexico, and how pro immigration control they are, because they know it, they've seen it, they've lived it, and they see the wrong people profiting off of it and the good people getting sent back to Mexico and starting all over. It's fucked, dude. it's
It's
it's a
fucked, and
shitty
it
it's a
does
shitty system, and it needs a lot of
a
change and a
lot
lot of
of
reform.
reform and rework.
And again, how about we just, instead of Trump stepping in and saying we're going to build a wall, how about we go to the border patrol and say, where do you need your resources? How can
Right.
we help you best do your job, instead of doing a political ploy and saying we're going to build a wall and that's going to keep them out? Like, you
No.
idiot, you don't understand how this works.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Hispanic people are crafty fucking people, very intelligent people. If you think building a wall is going to keep them out of our country,
you
you're
got another
fucking
thing coming.
delusional.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not happening.
And a wall is just like Pendongi said, it's just such a bad idea for numerous reasons. Just the message that it sends just by itself, as like, here's a wall. So now what you've done is you've essentially said to the world, we're walling our country off, and we're excluding ourselves from the society, basically the society of the world as a whole, which is what, to a degree, China tried to do way back when they didn't want to trade with fucking anybody. They were like, absolutely not, get the fuck out.
I've said it 100 times. All you're going to do by building a 20-foot wall is create a market for 25-foot ladders. Like that, you're not accomplishing anything. And
Yeah.
if you really do think you're accomplishing something, you are dumber than you look,
Yep.
because that's not going to help or change anything.
Right.
Not a
So
chance.
no shot. No shot. But, and chat, you're right. Economically and logistically, it's just not feasible.
No, terrible idea.
Terrible idea. Anyway, moving on.
Stupid.
Otherwise, I'll sit on that soapbox for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
So the next one that he signed, one of the next ones he signed, was protecting public health and the environment and restoring science to tackle climate crisis. So this order orders a review of all the action taken by the last administration that might conflict with what Biden wants to do with climate, with in regards to climate. And this is going to end up provoking a raft. A raft. This is the legit word. A raft of climate-related executive orders made by President Trump. And then quoted in this order, it says, "Our nation has an abiding commitment to empower our workers and communities, promote and protect our public health and the environment, and to conserve our national treasures and monuments, places that secure our national memory." Fine. Actually rely on science to tackle climate change, pour money into keeping national parks and monuments looking good, which in turn generates tourism revenue and puts money back into the communities that those are part of, and to promote and keep people healthy and working. Fine, I'm good with that.
Works for me.
I'm okay with that.
I'm in. Sign me up.
Yep. Squash said people forget that they can see the biggest change by imposing local changes, i.e., the judges that oversee the immigration cases. Very true. No, you're good, Squash. Yes, please. I can get behind that order 100%. That's Pendonkeys. I think everybody can. If you actually start relying on science rather than whimsical fantasy and just the staunch climate change is a hoax thing, maybe we'll actually see some damn change.
Yeah,
And
it'd be nice if other countries would get on that same board and do their part also.
right. And now, so the next one is preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. This is quoted. The first two sentences are quotes out of the order. Every person should be treated with respect and dignity and should be able to live without fear, no matter who they are or whom they love. It is the policy of Biden's administration to prevent and combat discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. This order sets out reviews for agencies to ensure they fully cooperate with Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 64 and other laws prohibiting discriminations on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. Cool. Everybody love everybody. Let's not hate people. I'm here for it. Essentially, that's what that means. Fine. That will, in turn, probably play into people of whatever walk of the LGBTQIAZ plus whatever the fucking letters are in that thing now, coming back into play in the military. That's going to be an ongoing experiment. That's another soapbox that I could get on, but I think I will just leave that for another time. Be all
Not
and
a bad idea.
Be all and end all. Let's just not hate people based on what the fuck they want to be or what the fuck they are. Cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then the last one.
Happy.
Yep. The last one we got on here is ethic commitments by executive branch personnel. So this one is to make it so that each appointee to every executive agency from January 20th onwards has to sign this ethics pledge. And this ethics pledge is as follows. I commit to decision making on the merits and exclusively in the public interest without regard to private gain or personal benefit. I commit to conduct that upholds the independence of law enforcement and precludes improper interference with investigative or persecutorial decisions of the Department of Justice. I commit to ethical choices of post-government employment that do not raise the appearance that I have used my government service for private gain, including by using confidential information acquired and relationships established for the benefit of future clients. So, this is stating that everybody that now is appointed and probably even already in executive office of whatever agency they're in, that they must make their decisions and act in the benefit of the public interest and, stop doing their job to have personal gain or personal benefit, i.e. loads of money coming your way. And then to not use the information that you have learned while in government to conduct business afterwards, i.e. insider trading.
That would be beautiful.
So if that one
would actually happen,
if that one can work and we get that one on board, hell yeah, let's do it. And this kind of ties into something.
Operate within the best interests of the American people and not from what you stand to gain from it politically or monetarily. What?
I know.
That sounds
bizarre. And this kind of ties in to something I heard the other day, and I agree with this. This person was talking about how Congress as a whole should be run, and it was like they need to introduce term limits, which we've talked about. They need to the voting on when they go to vote for a raise, congresspersons to get raises. That doesn't need to be a vote that goes on the floor of Congress. That needs to be a vote that comes to the people whom they represent, and we get to vote whether or not they get a raise based on how well we think they did their job. Then it also said, they was also talking about if any person in Congress happens to make, I think they said something like $1 million plus a year, then you're going to get audited. Because we want to know where the hell all that money's coming from. Because your salary is six figures, and if I'm correct in my memory, I think it's roughly close to $300K a year, I think, for a Congress. I think so, something like that.
I think it's 140 grand a year.
Wow, then I was really giving them a lot more than what they probably deserve. So it's $140,000 a year.
Congress, you get 140 grand a year.
So
yeah, and all like Donkeys just said, welcome to the show, Donkeys. We love to have
this. Is great.
You're just saying
shit that we've been saying.
If you would go back and listen to podcasts since day one, everything that you're commenting is right up our alley because it's true.
It's just true.
It's all coming from lobbyists.
It's coming from lobbyists, PACs, and super PACs that just pad the pockets of the people that they believe will get things swung in the direction that they want it swung so that their business or whatever the fuck they're lobbying for profits.
I
So,
actually couldn't tell donkeys. He
oh,
says I don't get to talk politics that often if you can't tell. No, you sound more educated than majority of people that I speak to on a day-to-day basis about this stuff. Because
I know,
most
I
times
know, I
I
know.
start
Pedonkeys
getting
doesn't get to, because we try and
most
do it
times I get
sometimes.
into a conversation with people like on the street or in a bar or whatever about this stuff, and they just start spewing crazy talk, and I'm like, I'm not even gonna try. This isn't the avenue for me to get on a soapbox. I'm like, I know, right? That's crazy. Yeah, dude, this pandemic is made up, man. Definitely made up. I'm like, I just don't want to spend the time right now
Right?
when you're 3 beers deep trying to change your mind, because
Yeah, it's just not gonna work.
you're gonna get aggressive and say that I'm an idiot and I'm gonna,
Not a
not
productive
worth it.
conversation.
Not worth it.
Pedonkeys, I'm a liberal in West Virginia. I keep my mouth shut off, and that must be difficult. I can. West Virginia is a very, very conservative state. So yeah,
What did West Virginia vote percentage wise towards Trump
probably
this year?
an
I know it
overwhelming
was
percent,
high.
an
I think it
overwhelming percent Trump.
was it like 76%?
Probably something like that.
I know it was. I remember seeing it was high and like, yeah, West Virginia, shocker.
Right. Yeah, 70
Love
plus.
Trump out there.
Yep. So if that ethics executive order can actually be implemented, he signed it. So if it can be implemented and enforced, then I'm all here for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be, I think, a good change that I would like to see in our government. So that actually holds people accountable to do the job that they were elected to do, which was to keep the public interest and the people that they represent their interests forefront in their mind and vote accordingly,
Mm-hmm.
and then not to take they'll call them donations, but any person can look at that and see it's basically a fucking bribe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and the stuff I just mentioned, term limits, all that other stuff, if that could actually get implemented as well, that would be fantastic. But
Mm-hmm.
the uphill battle is getting that to Congress, because everybody that's in, like, a majority of people that are in Congress right now have been there fucking since the Crypt Keeper was a child.
It's crazy
It
when you actually start watching like a
like
lot of congressional hearings and you see the same people over and they say the same shit
it's just they're
over and over. And tell me about why you signed this pact with this congressperson in 1998. Well, I was doing it. I yield my time.
yeah, it's
Like,
it's it's dumb. Like what we
shut
have,
up. Like,
like
it's,
for example, we have fucking Cocaine Mitch, who was born in like fucking 40 something, who has
do
been
you know
in
what? Do you know why they
Congress.
call him Cocaine Mitch?
Why?
Because his family has ties to a business that basically gave the McConnell family, because apparently there's a lot of politicians, a lot of money over the years as quote unquote donations, and they got busted as basically being like a front for a huge cocaine
Oh, so the McConnells were
company.
all for the shipping of cocaine from South America in the 80s.
They were their family definitely has ties to companies that sold cocaine,
Mm,
but it was like a front of a business,
white people.
Yeah, white people.
But
White
yeah, so
people love
like
their coke, man.
that dude has been in Congress since like the 60s, and many people his same age have been there for that long, if not longer, and all they've done is hold on to these antiquated values and ideas and beliefs that were maybe fine for society back in 65,
Yeah.
but literally have no bearing in 2021. Like, how things ran back then is not how things are run right now,
Or is
or
how the
should be run right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you can't, like, this is the problem. Like the boomers, like, yeah, boomers, I'm calling you out. Get mad. There's the door.
You get called a boomer all the time. It's fine.
Like, all y'all's old ass, like, that beliefs and ideals, a lot of those don't play well now. Sorry about it. Not sorry. Like, you can't run the world how it used to be. Okay, you gotta adapt and overcome.
Yeah.
So all these
Long,
old ass fuckers in Congress right now need to like, I don't know.
well, and if you continue to get elected, like, that's fine or whatever, but have some sort of a term limit,
Right.
not just so you just until you die you can be a congressperson.
Yeah.
Like at
Yeah.
some point in
Like
time
I feel
there
like
needs to
you
be a,
get.
a fresh blood in there to actually make some changes so it doesn't just keep going the same way every single
I feel
time.
like fuck it, like give them a 4 year term. Just quit with the midterms. Move it to a 4 year term, and every time the president gets elected,
There you
Congress
go.
is up for election as well. And do the same thing you do with the president. Limit them to 2 terms. You get elected for 2 terms, great. You're done. You thank you for doing your job. Now let's get somebody else in there who A might be on the same wavelength as you, or B maybe more progressive or not or whatever. But if you didn't do your job well the first time, you get to get voted out
You're done.
and you're
See,
done. And then
yeah.
get some new blood in there. I don't know. That's my take
Yeah.
on it. That's what I'd like to see happen.